The moment I knew something was wrong wasn't when my son dropped his fork or when Caleb smiled across the table like everything was perfect. It was when I realized I couldn't feel the tips of my fingers, and the last thing I touched was a slice of garlic bread he insisted on seasoning himself. The garlic was strong enough to hide something else, something bitter and dry that made my tongue curl, and my heart thud once, heavy and offbeat. Caleb raised his glass to toast. "To family," he said, his eyes warm, rehearsed, unblinking. And in that instant, I understood that this man, the man who'd moved into our lives less than a year ago, had never actually belonged at our table. But I didn't show fear. I smiled back, because I've lived too long on instinct to panic first. The kind of fear I felt then didn't scream. It coiled. Before I take you further, pause right now and tell me, where are you watching this from? I'd love to know which part of the world you're in as we go on this wild journey together. And if it's your first time hearing one of our stories, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another moment of shocking betrayal and epic comebacks. We drop stories every week that remind us just how strong one person can be when the world turns on them. Now, back to that night. My name is Marla Jensen. I'm a 38-year-old bookstore manager in Lincoln Beach, Oregon, and for a long time, I thought my life was finally settling. After years of raising my son Eli on my own, juggling school pickups, managing rent hikes, patching scraped knees and broken dreams, I thought maybe the universe had sent me a soft place to land in Caleb Monroe. He wasn't flashy or loud. He brought home sunflowers for no reason, fixed my leaky sink without asking, and folded laundry like it was an act of love. Eli liked him too, especially when Caleb remembered his favorite baseball stats or made jokes about the weather sounding like a grumpy old man. But that night, everything about him felt too smooth. The dinner was just the three of us. No occasion. Just Caleb wanting to try out a new recipe. Chicken piccata, roasted potatoes, and that garlic bread. The wine glasses were already poured when we came down from helping Eli with his algebra homework. It was all set. That's what gets me now. Not the poison, not the fear, but the fact that he planned this down to the wine pairing. We ate, laughed, and then, slowly, Eli reached for his water glass and paused, his face pale, confused. "Mom," he said, rubbing his eyes, "I feel kinda..." And then his head dipped forward like a puppet with the strings cut. My fingers went numb seconds later, and across the table, Caleb sat there watching us, not with panic, not with concern, but with a kind of grim anticipation. That's when I knew this wasn't random. This was his moment, the kind that takes months to choreograph. I didn't collapse, not all the way. I let my body go heavy, like I'd passed out. But inside, my thoughts were screaming, piecing together breadcrumbs from the last few weeks. The extra life insurance policies he urged me to sign just in case. The weird text from my sister Camille that he claimed he never saw. The day I found Eli's backpack unzipped and Caleb swore he hadn't touched it, even though the inhaler was moved. It all clicked as I lay there slumped at the table, praying my son was still breathing beside me and realizing I was now starring in a play I never auditioned for. And Caleb, it turns out, had written the script. I didn't move. Not when Caleb stood from his chair and calmly picked up the plates. Not when he crouched beside Eli and gently checked his pulse like a medic on autopilot. And especially, not when he stepped over my body, knelt beside me and whispered, "That should do it." My jaw slackened just slightly, enough to keep up the lie. Inside, every cell in my body screamed to jump up and strangle him with my bare hands. But I needed answers. If there was even a sliver of a chance to protect Eli, if he was still breathing, I had to know what Caleb would do next. I let my eyes stay half closed, lashes lowered just enough to blur the world, but catch flashes. His hand scrolling through his phone. His voice low and too calm. "It's done," he said into the receiver. "Yeah, both of them. It's cleaner than we thought." He chuckled, a soft sound, like he was discussing a football score. "She didn't even fight it. Must have hit faster than expected." There was a pause. Then his voice shifted, softened into something intimate. "Don't pack too heavy, babe. Just the passports and the backup drive. I'll take care of the rest." My stomach dropped. Babe. That wasn't me. I recognized that voice through the speaker, even before he said her name. "Camille, I mean it. Don't do that panicked thing again. Stick to the plan. Once the bodies are found, you show up. Play the grieving sister. You know what to say." Camille, my younger sister. The one who had helped me move after the divorce. The one who knew all my passwords. Who babysat Eli last summer when I picked up extra shifts. Who once told me, after our mother's funeral, that I was the only family that ever really felt like home. My ears rang so loud I almost missed what he said next. "Insurance pays out in 4 weeks. I've got the policy number ready. Oregon Mutual won't question a thing. She signed off last month." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. But I just lay there, every part of me on fire with disbelief and fury, and listened to Caleb outline my erasure like it was an itinerary. My mind flashed back to a week ago when Camille had randomly dropped by with soup, claiming she was worried I looked pale lately, and how she lingered by the medicine cabinet longer than necessary. How she'd looked Eli in the eyes and told him he was the strongest kid she knew. I thought it was love. I thought it was support. Now I knew it was guilt. The wine, the food, even the specific night. All planned. Caleb kept moving around the kitchen, whistling now, casual and careless, as if he were prepping for a backyard barbecue. I heard him run water over the dishes, pour the wine down the drain, and rummage through the drawer where I kept my old journals. "Neater handwriting," he muttered. Something desperate, believable. And then I heard pages tear. He was building a suicide note. My suicide note. To match the drug in our blood, the setup, the tragic mother who couldn't handle the pressure story. Caleb had it all figured out. And if I hadn't stayed conscious, it would have worked. He spoke again, this time louder, like rehearsing for his performance. "I came home from my shift. I found them like this. I tried CPR, but it was too late." He repeated it, over and over, adding pauses, choking up his voice. I realized then he was practicing how to cry. I bit down gently on the inside of my cheek to stay still, so hard I tasted blood. Then he turned the music on, something soft, classic. James Taylor. Fire and Rain. The song played while he mopped the kitchen floor and rearranged our lifeless bodies like props. He moved Eli closer to me, placed his head against my shoulder. Then he placed my hand over Eli's heart like some twisted tableau of mother and son in eternal sleep. My fingers touched my son's chest, and that's when I felt it. A faint, fluttering beat. He was alive. My baby was still alive. That was all I needed to stay in the game. Caleb's voice drifted from the hallway again. Yeah, babe, I'll make the 911 call after I stage the front door. Should sound panicked, but not hysterical. They'll believe it. She's got that history, remember? History. That was rich. I had gone to therapy for 3 months after my divorce and told one doctor I struggled with sleep and anxiety. I'd even written it off on my insurance under stress-related fatigue. Caleb must have seen the bill. He was going to use it as motive. He was going to use every part of my life, including my healing, to justify my death. That kind of betrayal doesn't break you all at once. It spreads slow, like frost cracking through the soil, until all the roots of your life snap underfoot. My sister, my partner, they were in this together. They knew how much I loved Eli. They knew I'd never leave him. So they decided to take him too, because they knew if I survived and he didn't, the story wouldn't hold. And if he survived and I didn't, I'd still find a way to scream from the grave. I stayed silent as Caleb stepped out to the porch. I heard the screen door creak open, the sound of him lighting a cigarette, practicing sighs between drags. And then I heard him say, "Just a few more hours. Then it's done. We start new." But I wasn't done. I wasn't finished. And this story, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The cigarette smoke wafted through the screen door, faint and bitter, curling into the air like some unholy incense after a false prayer. I stayed still, cold from the tile beneath my cheek, eyes nearly shut but angled enough to see Eli's chest still rise and fall, faintly, slowly, but enough. That heartbeat was my anchor, my reason to remain calm, even while every instinct inside me clawed to scream. Caleb walked back in and muttered to himself as he clicked off the music. He moved with unsettling calm, even pausing to straighten the little wooden family sign that hung beside the door, the one that read, "Grateful, thankful, blessed." I'd bought it last Thanksgiving when things felt okay, when I thought I had something solid to build on. But now, I could see how every part of my life had been turned into a stage for my own elimination. That's when I realized he thought this would be a clean ending, but he had underestimated the one thing that would destroy him. I was still aware, and unlike Caleb, I didn't need to fake panic. I needed to remember everything. I started memorizing every detail in silence. His words, the timeline, the layout of the room, the journal he ripped from, my 2016 one with the worn-out spine. The note he forged, left on the counter, folded with a pen resting neatly atop it. I even tracked how many times he checked his watch, once every 10 minutes, waiting for the sedative to fully take hold. That meant he didn't know the dosage exactly. That meant he hadn't tested it. That meant he'd made a mistake. He left the room again, and I took a calculated risk. I moved just enough to reach behind Eli's back and feel the hem of his sweatshirt. His skin was cool, but not clammy. I pressed my palm to his chest. He flinched. Thank God. He was slipping in and out, but he was there. I pressed gently again, twice. Our old signal. When he was a toddler and had night terrors, I used to tap his back twice to let him know I was there. He'd tap back once if he heard me. Now, he did. A slow, weak squeeze of my fingers. That was all I needed. I whispered so faintly it felt like a breath. Don't move yet. Stay still, baby. Another squeeze. Then, stillness. My boy was listening. Caleb returned with gloves, blue nitrile gloves he used for cleaning the bathroom. He pulled them on and started wiping the wine glasses. Mine, Eli's. He was removing fingerprints, smudges, even wiping the base of the stem. Then he moved to the fridge and pulled out the sauce bottle, the one he'd used for the chicken, and dumped it down the drain. I memorized the brand, the shape, the label. Everything he was trying to erase, I was recording. And then, the sickest part. He pulled out his phone, flipped to the voice recorder app, and started narrating. This is Caleb Monroe, recording evidence in case it's needed. I returned home at approximately 7:15 p.m. and found my partner, Marla Jensen, and her son unresponsive at the dinner table. I attempted to revive them. I believe this may have been a tragic, mutual suicide attempt. Marla's been under significant emotional distress lately. Depression, paranoia. His voice cracked. He paused for dramatic effect. She recently said things like, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." I nearly gasped aloud. I had said something similar during an argument weeks ago. Out of exhaustion, when Eli's school called about a fight, and I felt like the world was slipping sideways. Caleb had nodded sympathetically then, told me I needed rest, held my hand. And now, he was using those exact words as a weapon. My words, taken out of context, spun into a noose. I realized in that moment that this wasn't about rage or even money. It was about erasure. Caleb wanted to rewrite the version of me that people would remember. He wanted to make me the unstable mother, the weak one, the cautionary tale. But he forgot. I write stories for a living. I spent years keeping journals, archiving memories, building timelines. And if I got through this night, I'd weaponize every single one of those words against him. Around midnight, Caleb made his move. He adjusted the thermostat, turning it low to slow body cooling. Clever. Then, he opened the window slightly, just enough to imply maybe a gas leak. I listened as he rehearsed his final 911 call. He even threw in a sob between lines. I pictured it all, like a play with only one actor and two unwilling props. But this actor was slipping. His nerves were starting to fray. I heard it in the way he mumbled, the curse he let slip under his breath when he knocked over a photo frame. He picked it up and stared. I could feel the silence stretch. It was a picture of Eli and me at the beach. I remembered that day. Eli had insisted I jump in the water even though it was freezing. We were soaked and shivering, laughing in towels afterward. Caleb wasn't in the photo. He wasn't in our life yet. I hoped he saw that. I hoped it reminded him that we were whole long before he showed up. Finally, he walked into the bedroom, muttering something about grabbing our IDs. The second I heard the door shut behind him, I moved. Slowly, carefully, I nudged Eli and whispered, "Stay with me. Just a few more minutes." His eyelids fluttered. I crawled toward the corner of the room, still weak, but steady enough to reach the drawer where I kept my old phone. It was dusty, cracked, and usually dead. But I kept it charged once a week out of habit. Please turn on. I powered it up. The blue screen glowed. I muted it instantly and opened the voice recorder. I didn't have much time, but I whispered everything I remembered. Caleb's words, Camille's involvement, the insurance, the suicide note, the drug, the bottle brand, the timestamp. I recorded every piece of his crime while my body trembled and my vision swam. Then I tucked the phone into Eli's hoodie pocket. If he got out and I didn't, it would survive. But I was planning to get out too, because what Caleb didn't know was that he hadn't silenced anyone. He'd just awakened a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And Camille? She was about to find out just how loud a sister's silence can become when betrayal runs deep enough to burn. By the time Caleb made the 911 call, I had already slid the phone deep into Eli's hoodie pocket and returned to my place near the table, slumped and still, heart pounding like a war drum under my ribs. I listened as Caleb's voice cracked on command. Yes, I just got home. They're not responding. I don't know what happened. He let out a dry sob. Maybe a gas leak or food poisoning. Please, just send someone. Please. He even gagged like he was about to be sick. I knew that gag. He practiced it last winter when we binge-watched crime shows. You never know, he'd said back then, smirking, when you might need to sound convincingly wrecked. I'd laughed at the time, not knowing the rehearsals were real. Now, I knew he wasn't just calculating. He was trained. The 911 dispatcher kept him on the line. I heard him walk to the front porch, still babbling about grief and confusion, about how he'd tried to save us. I laid still, letting the hum of the fridge and the ticking kitchen clock count the seconds, the silence between his lies stretching longer than it should have. I knew help was coming, but I also knew that if I didn't play this just right, the truth would die on that stretcher, choked out by his fake tears and polished lies. The paramedics arrived first, 2 of them, male and female. The woman's voice was calm, clipped. Adult female, mid to late 30s, shallow breathing, no visible trauma, pulse, faint, but present. I felt gloved fingers on my wrist, cool and clinical. The male medic moved to Eli. Teen male, early teens, pupils reactive. Looks like he's stabilizing. Caleb hovered nearby, sniffling, wringing his hands. They were fine, I swear. I went to get groceries and came back and I found them like this. Sir, please step back, the female EMT said firmly. Let us do our job. They began prepping stretchers, starting IVs. I wanted to open my eyes, to scream, to say, "Don't listen to him." But I knew I had one shot at this, and the moment wasn't now. I had to wait until someone looked closer, really looked. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Blinding white lights, the chill of antiseptic air, the rhythmic beeping of machines. I remember being wheeled down a corridor and hearing nurses talking over me. They both ingested something. Heart rates are low but climbing. The kids waking faster. The mom's semi-conscious. I let my breathing stay steady but shallow. My eyelids twitching just enough to be mistaken for reflex. Somewhere between the chaos, a new voice entered. Calm, kind, firm. Dr. Dana Reese, ER attending. I want full toxicology on both. Someone find out who brought them in. Dana. I clung to her voice like a lifeline. She didn't sound rushed. She sounded suspicious. I don't know how long I lay there before I felt it. Someone brushing hair from my face, fingers soft and gentle. Marla, the voice whispered. Female. If you can hear me, squeeze once. I didn't move. Not yet. Your son's stable. You're safe. I just need to know if you're aware. I waited until I heard the door close behind someone else. Then I gave her the faintest squeeze. 1. Her breath caught. I felt her hand wrap around mine quickly, Firmly. Good. You're smart to wait. I believe you. She placed something on my chest, flat and warm. Paper? This is a pen. I'm placing it under your hand. Just scribble if you can. Any motion. I moved my fingers just enough to make a mark. All right, Mama, she whispered, voice thick with emotion. Let's take down the monster. Later, I overheard Dana speaking to a nurse. There's no external trauma, but there are bruises. Old ones, faded, wrist, left rib. They don't match his story. Caleb, of course, was right outside the room, pacing like a grieving spouse. He kept pushing to come in. She's my partner, he said. I just need to be with her. Please. Dana blocked him with steely calm. She's sedated. There's nothing you can do right now. Wait outside. I didn't see her, but I imagined the look she gave him. And I knew in that moment I had someone in my corner. Hours blurred. I drifted in and out. I could hear Eli's voice through the curtain, weak but steady. Where's my mom? He asked. She's next door, sweetheart, someone replied. She's hanging on. Then, in a voice so soft it made my chest ache, I heard him whisper, She didn't do this. Caleb did. That was my boy. Even drugged, even scared, he knew. My fingers twitched again. I needed to wake up soon. Sometime later, Dana returned. The boy's waking faster. He's telling us things. They match signs we're seeing. This isn't what it looks like. Another nurse whispered back, but the partner, he called 911. He's got the right script. Crying, blaming depression. Dana's voice went cold. Too right, too rehearsed. We're digging deeper. That evening, Caleb came back to the room while Dana was on rotation. He waited until the hallway cleared. I felt him before I heard him. His cologne, the click of his boots. Then, the familiar weight of his presence beside my bed. You always had to make things difficult, he murmured. Always had to push. We could have done this clean. Now you're just going to drag it out. He took my hand, held it. I had to resist the urge to rip it away. They're already starting to believe it, he whispered. Depressed single mom, financial stress, teenage son acting out. It all adds up. His voice dropped an octave. You should have just let go. I waited. I didn't flinch, but inside, I memorized every word, every smug breath. Then he kissed my forehead, sickeningly gentle. Goodbye, Marla. I'll send flowers. He turned and left. The moment the door shut, Dana entered seconds later. She must have been watching. We heard it all, she said softly. There's a recording. Room's monitored. I finally let my eyes flicker open. Dana leaned close. He made a mistake. He thought you were alone. But you're not. We're going to take him down. And right then, I knew. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war. And for the first time in days, I wasn't scared. I was ready. It was just after dawn when I heard the click of heels outside my hospital door. Slow, deliberate, far too familiar. I didn't need to see her to know it was Camille. That sound had followed me since childhood, when she'd sneak down the hallway in Mom's shoes, pretending to be someone important. Now, she actually believed she was. She knocked once, too soft for staff to hear, and opened the door without waiting for permission. Marla, she said, her voice laced with the kind of mock sadness you only hear at funerals. Oh my God. You look awful. I kept my eyes closed, breathing steady, letting her think the drugs were still doing their job. I needed her unguarded, loose-lipped. That didn't take long. She pulled the chair close, her perfume sharp and expensive, something she'd never worn around me before. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered, voice trembling, but not with guilt, with excitement. "Caleb thinks I'm at the Airbnb already, but I had to see you one last time. Say it to your face." My fingers twitched under the blanket, but she didn't notice. She leaned in closer, her lips near my ear. "You always thought you were the stronger sister, the one who held everything together. But look at you now, hooked up to tubes, half dead, barely relevant." I stayed perfectly still, letting the words scrape against my chest like broken glass. "I loved him first, you know," she continued, her tone sharpening. "But you got there first, like you always do. Jobs, men, even mom's attention. I was supposed to be the star, remember? Not the backup plan." She exhaled heavily. "I didn't want to hurt Eli. I mean, I love that kid. But it was the only way. If you'd just let go of this sad little life you built, just once, things could have ended peacefully." A moment of silence passed. Then, almost dreamily, she added, "Caleb says we'll disappear for a while. Go somewhere warm. Costa Rica. Can you believe that? I'm finally getting my reset." I opened my eyes. Camille froze mid-sentence, her mouth open just a little too wide, like a mirror cracking without warning. For one breathless moment, the air between us buzzed with pure electric silence. I turned my head slightly, locking eyes with her. "You should have stayed gone, Camille." She bolted upright, face pale. You're awake?" I sat up, slow and deliberate, letting the heart monitor beep just enough to confirm I was very much alive. Awake, listening, recording. Every word. Her lips parted, then closed again. Her face twisted into something ugly and panicked, but I didn't stop. "I know about the insurance, the forged note, the grieving sister act, Caleb's rehearsals. I even know about the backup drive in your luggage." She staggered back. "You don't understand. Caleb said you'd never wake up. The dosage. He said it was perfect." I tilted my head. "Perfect for what? Killing me? Or watching me suffer just enough to break?" That's when the door opened. Caleb walked in, holding 2 cups of hospital coffee. His eyes lit up when he saw Camille. "You're early," he started, then froze mid-step as he saw me sitting upright, alert, eyes blazing. The color drained from his face so fast it was like watching a photo fade. "You're awake," his voice cracked. Thank God. I've been so—" "Don't," I said sharply. "You don't get to lie anymore." Camille tried to bolt toward the door, but 2 hospital security guards stepped in behind Caleb, blocking the exit. Dana followed, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "Room's been under audio surveillance since last night," she said calmly, addressing the guards. "Everything's been recorded and sent to Detective Moore at Lincoln PD. They're already on their way." Caleb spun around. "This is a setup. She's lying. She's unstable." I reached beside my bed and pulled out my journal, the same one Caleb had torn pages from. I opened it to a marked spot, handwriting samples, comparison notes, and the audio file transcribed from my old phone. "You built a fake version of me," I said, voice shaking now not with fear, but with fury. "You wrote my suicide note using my words. You turned every weakness I ever confessed into ammunition. But you forgot something important." I looked at Camille. "I survive. I always have. And I don't go down quietly." Caleb lunged, not at me, but at Dana, grabbing for the clipboard. The guards intercepted him instantly, slamming him against the wall. "Get your hands off me," he snarled. "This is harassment." "Tell it to the detective," Dana said coolly. "She'll be here in 5. Camille backed into a corner, trembling. "I didn't poison you," she said to me. "I never touched the food. It was Caleb. He planned everything." I stared at her. My sister. The girl who once braided my hair for picture day, who held my hand when we buried Mom, who kissed Eli goodnight when I was too exhausted to stand. "You were supposed to protect me," I whispered. "You were supposed to protect him." Camille crumbled into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted something of my own." I looked at Dana, then the guards. "Please get them out of here." Caleb screamed all the way down the hallway. "You're ruining everything! You're nothing without me." I exhaled, the air in my chest finally feeling like mine again. "Then I guess it's about time I find out what I really am." Dana stayed behind. "PD's got what they need. And your son's awake. He's asking for you." My eyes welled up. "Is he okay?" She smiled gently. "He's more than okay. He asked if he could testify." I laughed through tears. "That's my boy." And in that moment, sitting in a bland hospital room, IV in one arm, betrayal bleeding from every pore, I felt something I hadn't in months. Power. Not because I beat them, but because I remembered who I was, even when they tried to erase me. This wasn't just a comeback. This was rebirth. And the fire had only just begun. 3 weeks later, I sat in the front row of the county courthouse, hands folded in my lap, the faint sting of the IV scars still itching beneath my blouse cuffs. Beside me, Eli squeezed my hand, not because he needed reassurance, but because I did. He wore a navy blue button-down he'd picked himself, and his hair, never tame, was neatly combed back. He looked older than 14, wiser, and maybe he was. After everything we'd been through, neither of us would ever look at the world the same way again. Across the room, Caleb sat in his neatly pressed suit, chainless but smug. Camille sat 2 seats behind him, eyes red-rimmed, wrists cuffed. She hadn't spoken to me since the hospital, not a single word. But she didn't need to. Her betrayal hung in the air like second-hand smoke, cloying, invisible, and hard to breathe through. "State of Oregon versus Caleb Monroe and Camille Jensen," the judge called out. The courtroom stirred. Reporters scribbled, cameras rolled silently behind glass. I hated the attention, but I needed the record. I needed the world to see who these people were when the curtain was pulled back. The prosecution led with the facts, the toxicology report showing a rare sedative in both Eli's and my bloodstream, traced to a prescription Caleb had acquired illegally under a friend's name. The forged suicide note, analyzed and matched against my original journals, with glaring inconsistencies and mismatched strokes. The old phone I had tucked into Eli's hoodie that night, its audio file playing loud and clear for the courtroom to hear Caleb's voice saying, "Don't pack too heavy, babe, just the passports and the backup drive." The room went silent when the recording reached Camille's voice saying, "We'll finally be free." I didn't look at her. Not then. I focused on breathing. Caleb's lawyer tried everything, claimed the audio was manipulated, that I was hallucinating from trauma, that I forged the confession myself. But each time, the DA shut him down with receipts, call logs, insurance policy records, bank transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, an account Camille had no idea we'd even found. But we had. Eli had helped. In the hospital recovery room, he remembered something strange. Caleb had once asked him to help set up a secure drive on an old laptop. We recovered it from the closet, and it contained everything: plans, flight bookings, emails between the two of them disguised under fake names. The night Caleb thought he'd killed us, he'd left behind a trail longer than a country highway. When I took the stand, the room fell still. I looked Caleb in the eye, not to cower, not to provoke, but to witness. He wanted to erase me, I said. Not just my life, but my story. He wanted to turn me into the kind of woman people pity. Depressed, desperate, disposable. But I wasn't. I'm not. I was surviving, parenting, trying. And when I realized what he was doing, I didn't scream. I remembered. I recorded. I waited. Because the truth always waits for the right moment to roar. I didn't cry. Not until I stepped off the stand and saw Eli's face. He mouthed, "You were amazing." And in that second, I knew whatever happened next, justice or not, we were whole again. Camille's lawyer struck a plea deal. 22 years. Reduced from 30 because she eventually confessed to her role in covering the plan, falsifying digital records, and making herself available to reconfirm the suicide note if asked. She cried in court, begged the judge to believe she'd been manipulated, gaslit, emotionally coerced. But her voice rang hollow. No tears for Eli, no apology for me, only regret for herself. When asked if she had anything to say, she turned to me, mascara streaked down both cheeks, and choked out, "I didn't think you'd survive." That was all. Caleb refused to plead, denied everything until the bitter end, smirked during closing arguments, interrupted the judge. The sentencing was brutal. "Mr. Monroe," the judge said, voice unflinching, "you are a predator, cloaked in charm, manipulation, and surgical control. You used a mother's vulnerabilities, a child's trust, and a woman's desire for stability to construct the perfect narrative. But you failed because you underestimated the strength of a woman who had already survived so much more than you could comprehend. Life, no parole, maximum security, no appeals." The room didn't cheer. There was no applause. Just the quiet, cold satisfaction that comes when justice lands like thunder. Final, unyielding. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. One reporter asked, "Marla, what do you want people to remember about you?" I paused, thought about it. Then I said, "Not me. Remember my son. He stayed awake. He held on. He didn't give up. That's who this story's really about." And I meant every word, because Eli, my brave, stubborn, beautiful boy, was the reason I breathed through the paralysis, the reason I whispered through the poison, the reason I survived. We didn't go straight home that day. We drove to the coast, where the air smelled like salt, and the fog curled in lazy fingers across the water. Eli brought his sketchbook. I brought silence. We sat on the hood of my car, watching the waves roll in and out. "What now?" he asked. I looked at him. "Now we heal." "Does that mean forgiving them?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I watched a seagull drift above the tide, fearless and slow. "Forgiveness isn't for them," I finally said. "It's for us, and we'll get there. But not today." He nodded. "Good. I'm not ready either." That night, we slept like people who finally believed the doors were locked. Not to keep someone out, but to keep us safe in. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I didn't wake to check if Eli was still breathing. I already knew he was, because so was I. A year later, the walls of our new place don't echo anymore. That's how I know we've settled in. The silence here is soft, not sharp. No footsteps to flinch at. No shadows moving in places they shouldn't be. Just Eli's laughter down the hall, the thump of a basketball in the driveway, and the occasional hum of my bookstore's old heater kicking in too late. It's not fancy. Just a rented bungalow along the Oregon coast, tucked between a flower shop and a bait shack. But it's ours. Every chipped mug, every thrifted frame, every handmade note stuck to the fridge with magnet letters spelling out safe. We own that word now, not because it was handed to us, but because we bled for it, because we earned it. Eli's taller now. His voice has changed, deeper around the edges. But he still says, "Love you," every time he heads out. And he still sleeps with the same old hoodie tucked under his pillow, the one that held the phone that saved us. Some days, I still catch him looking over his shoulder in crowds, still checking locks twice, still watching people a beat too long to make sure their smiles aren't lies. Trauma leaves fingerprints even after the bruises fade. But he's healing. We both are. I reopened the bookstore last month. Not the same one from before. It didn't feel right going back. But a new one, on our terms. I named it Second Chapter. People smiled when they saw the sign, thought it was a clever nod to reading. But the truth runs deeper. It's about what comes after the plot twist, after the betrayal, after the part of your story where the villain almost wins. Every Friday, we get a few regulars who stop by for warm cider and quiet. One woman came in last week, eyes red, asking for anything about surviving betrayal. I handed her a worn copy of The Glass Castle, told her the most important part of any story is the part you decide to write after someone tries to take your pen. She smiled, but I could see it in her eyes. She'd been rewritten too. Camille writes from prison. Not often. Twice, maybe 3 times. The last one came on my birthday. She said she was sorry, said she'd been lonely her whole life and thought Caleb made her important. Said she understands now what she destroyed. I haven't written back. I might one day. But forgiveness, like grief, doesn't live on anyone else's timeline. Caleb, as far as I know, still denies everything, still insists I framed him, still thinks I'm a liar who got lucky. But I don't lose sleep over him anymore. He doesn't get to live rent-free in my mind. That space is reserved for things that grow. Eli's drawings, my plants, good books, warm light, and a future filled with nothing but truth. The nightmares are rare now. When they do come, I don't panic. I sit up, breathe, and remind myself where I am. Sometimes Eli knocks softly on the door. No words, just presence. Sometimes I knock on his. There's power in that quiet exchange, in knowing we are here, that we made it. A few weeks ago, Eli asked me the kind of question only a teenager can ask so bluntly. Do you think you'll ever fall in love again? I paused, smiled, and answered honestly. I'm already in love. With this life we fought to rebuild, everything else is optional. So if you're hearing this and you've been lied to, broken, betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, let me say this loud enough for you to carry it. You are not weak for surviving. You are unstoppable for remembering who you were before they tried to make you forget. You don't need revenge to find peace. You just need the courage to write a new ending, because that's what this is. Not a survival story, not a courtroom drama, Not even a tale of betrayal. This is a story about truth, how it waits patiently, how it burns quietly, how it always, always finds the light. And this time, we're the ones holding the pen. End.